Maverick News, the antivirus program for your mind. And now, the Freedom Reporters.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us again. I'm Rick Walker, and this is the Maverick News Channel, and we are the Freedom Reporters. I'm here with my co-host,
Brendan Kennedy. Good day. It is Sunday. The government has probably robbed most of you of an hour of your life last night, so that's always lovely.
Yeah. Don't forget, if you haven't done it already, to put your clocks ahead. Quite a few things to talk about tonight. We're going to update you on that missile attack in Iraq that we first reported on last night. We'll get you some live footage from the People's Convoy again today. And I'd like to have a discussion about propaganda and the way that it is, or maybe you might not consider it propaganda in this case, but information reporting on the threat of nuclear conflict in, or because of Ukraine, I think is more accurate. And why the information that we're receiving today, the kind of propaganda that we're also being subjected to, is bringing us a step closer and has put us at a greater risk of all of that. Plus, we'll talk about ways you can survive a nuclear attack.
Ooh, it's going to be deep. It's going to be dark. Well, I guess you could say it's going to be bright.
Well, as we get into that, I think that the problem is not people today don't see that subject as dark as I think it really truly is. I think we've become too complacent, but we'll illustrate that for you as the broadcast continues. So, what shall we begin with tonight, Brendan?
I think Iraq is probably a good start, as that was a predominant story. Some interesting things had come out about it.
Right.
So I think we should delve into that. We should be the update about it, and have a little bit of a discussion regarding politics with Iran that have been going on for many years, as there's some interesting things that have undergone with that and are undergoing right now.
So this is video from last night as missiles were detonated in Erbil near a U.S. So 12, I think we have confirmation now that there were 12 missiles that were fired.
Interesting.
And there was a television station that was damaged, that took a direct hit. But the fortunate thing is nobody was killed.
That is very fortunate, especially with all that happened. I did find some footage of inside the television station that was hit.
Mm-hmm.
And we could play that and share that. Gives you an inside kind of look as to what was happening. And this is a Kurdish television station. And this is CCTV camera from inside. That's very close. I mean, that there was that individual who was in there when as that had occurred, and that's a close call, man.
Yeah. So this is significant because I think if you really look at it objectively, it was meant to send a message to the United States, and it shows how quickly this conflict in Ukraine can get messy and even more complicated than it already is. We touched on this last night. I think there are a number of reasons why it's fortunate that no one was killed. If these missiles had actually detonated right on that U.S. consulate that is under construction, if a U.S. citizen or U.S. soldiers had been killed, it instantly would have resulted in an escalation. And the question is, did the Russians, who are aligned with Iran, were they involved in this? It's pretty clear that Vladimir Putin can basically bomb cities in Ukraine and not suffer any serious consequences, because it's pretty obvious the United States at this point is not prepared to put soldiers in there. Canada is not going to send soldiers in. Right now, we're just sending in military aid, lethal aid, money to buy weapons, which is escalating things in its own way. And of course, sanctions are being used. The United States, NATO, Canada, all the allied countries, they're engaging in what is essentially economic warfare. They've launched an economic war on Russia in response to what they're doing in Ukraine. As a result of all of this, the entire world is watching what's going on, and that includes Iran, which is an ally of Russia and a longtime enemy of the United States. So what do we have here? We have 12 ballistic missiles that were fired. It looks like they came from Iran. And the apparent target seemed to be that massive new U.S. consulate, which is being constructed in Erbil in Kurdistan, northern Iraq. So the Iranian Revolutionary Guard has taken credit for this, saying it was a retaliation for the killing of two of their officers in Syria during an attack last week.
Which I believe was conducted by Israel, if I'm not mistaken.
Right. So, but I think it's more than that. It's this is, I think, clearly tied to Ukraine as well, and I think this is meant to send a message to the United States, especially NATO in general, telling them that Iran is prepared to complicate things and create confusion and force the United States and NATO to fight on a second front. You see, it's sort of a response to the United States essentially going to war with Russia, but not really going to war with Russia.
Yeah.
Right? So this is Russia's response and an Iranian response in support of Russia, saying, well, Russia's going to war with you, but not really going to war with you. So
Not
if
only
this,
that, it's like a domino effect, right? So Russia is trampling all over the United States, which is supposed to be the superpower, and the very fact that it's been that superpower has kept everything in check for so long. And now the Russians have all this stuff going on, and so Iran is very easily able to see, like, the temperature is right. If they want to mess around, now seems to be the time to do it.
yeah, well, I think that I don't think the media has been honest with the public, the Western media. I don't think that the Canadian or U.S. governments, I don't think the Biden administration is being straight up and honest with the public. I don't think NATO is being honest because they're just portraying Putin as a megalomaniac who is bent on expanding his empire. Um, and that's why he's invaded Ukraine. They don't want to talk about the NATO expansion. They don't want to talk about any of the things they've done to provoke him over the past decade. And that's why they're not engaging in dialogue. The truth is, NATO is a threat to Russia.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't want Ukraine to be an independent, neutral country. They would like it to be under Western control or influence, and they would like to have NATO weapons stationed there. They want to put as much pressure on Putin as they can because they have Russia and Vladimir Putin in their crosshairs. That's the truth. They even since the end of the Cold War, they've seen Russia as an adversary, an opponent, an enemy. They've continued to treat Russia that way. And, well, they don't come out and say that, and they sort of deny it, and they want to blame everything. All of the West's problems right now on Vladimir Putin, the reality is NATO does pose an existential threat to Russia, especially if they are successful in making Ukraine part of NATO, part of the European Union, and putting weapons in there that could be pointed at Russia. So neither side wants to escalate to the point of a nuclear conflict, but we are getting escalation. And
Yeah.
Canada sending money, Canada sending night vision equipment, lethal aid, as Justin Trudeau has called it.
And it's
Guns.
millions of dollars. Like, holy gee.
Almost $500 million just in money.
Yeah. And that's on top of the equipment, right? So
on top of the equipment.
and that adds up. And it almost kind of makes me think about at the beginning of the pandemic when Canada started sending PPE, personal protective equipment, to China.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, we know things are going to get bad here. You know what? We don't need this stuff. Why don't you take it? You seem to need it more than we do. And then, lo and behold, we don't have anything. So, if Russia does strike, it's going to do it over the North Pole. And I firmly believe that. Or it's going to do it through naval submarine attacks where they are able to launch.
What do you mean attack Canada and the United States, you mean?
If it would probably hit United States first, I would think. And one of the quickest ways there is from over the pole.
Well, certainly that's the way the ICBMs come, yes.
Yeah. And I mean, God knows what their other capabilities are going to be, because there's going to be nukes that they can launch from submarines and all kinds of things. Like, it's not just limited to ICBMs. It could be all kinds of things that are probably already out there. And you don't see it, so you don't really know.
So, yeah, like from a strategic point of view, from the point of view of diplomacy, politics. This attack yesterday was significant because it just shows that this situation is. I guess what I'm saying is it further illustrates the way the geopolitical map is being redrawn and how alliances and um, are again being reformulated, right? So you're seeing China, Russia, um, Iran, and a few other countries aligning together. And the actions of NATO, the inability of the United States and Canada to deal with Russia through dialogue and a constructive diplomatic process has really pushed Russia into the open arms of the Chinese.
Yes. Of course, like where else are they going to turn? And China is siding with Russia on this very heavily. And I mean, China does have some distrust of Russia in some regard. And I have heard this from people who have lived in China specifically. And one of the number one things that they kind of cite is how many times in history Russia has changed hats. So it went from making deals with Hitler under Stalin to making deals with the Allied powers after Hitler tries to go in and take over Russia entirely. And then it changes back after the war. It says, well, you know what, we're not actually comrades anymore. So China has kind of a distrust for them because of that in some regard. But China's going to make money off of this, and they're going to make mad money off of it through all of the banking and all that. They're going to make huge amounts of money through loans and interests and just everything that the United States isn't providing. China's going to provide it, and they're going to come out on top for it.
Well, we're being asked to pay a higher price for everything: gasoline, groceries, everything. And I'm not convinced that these sanctions and all of these economic weapons that they've unleashed on Russia are going to be as effective as they think they're going to be. And that's in part because I think what they're doing is that in some ways they're shooting us in the foot.
That's exactly it. Like, the people pay for war.
Where it's crippling the things they're doing. It's crippling the economies in North America and all the NATO countries. But we're seeing huge inflation, and it's like Biden in particular and Trudeau, they're just blaming problems that they created prior to the conflict on Vladimir Putin.
In the most shameful of ways.
And these sanctions are just making things even worse here. And I think that it's naive to think that just because they take Russia out of their, the SWIFT payment program, or just because they say that they're banning Russian oil, you think that the Russians aren't still getting their oil to market? They'll just ship it around to China, and then China will rebrand it. And, like, there are just a lot of different ways, is what I'm saying, for them to continue to get their product to market. And
yeah. All of the United States' enemies. There's North Korea, China, Iran. Like, these are all bad dudes we're talking about. Real bad dudes.
They'll find other ways to make payments and shift where they're trading. Credit card companies that stopped doing business in Ukraine now are just not going to get paid. by all the people that they've cut their services off to. A lot of these actions are kind of stupid.
Yeah, I think so. And it's just going to drive them. Like I said, North Korea loves energy. They want all of it, and they have a worldwide black market and are fully capable of paying for things.
But this is one of the reasons I wanted to talk about the nuclear war threat. I have noticed that people today don't seem to be as worried about a nuclear war as they used to be. And I think it's happening for a few reasons. Until like about the between like from the 1950s until like the late 1990s, it is true that there were far more nuclear weapons in existence. And then there were talks and negotiations and treaties signed to reduce the nuclear arsenal worldwide. And during those years, especially during the 80s, it was primarily it was basically exclusively the United States and Russia that had these weapons. And the arsenal was drawn down. And so I think there were something like 60,000 warheads at one time, enough to destroy the entire planet many times over. And now it's been reduced substantially. But I don't think that necessarily means the threat is reduced proportionately. I've seen a lot of articles like this one in Quora, which is a pretty left-wing online media outlet. And it's this kind of information, I think, that is making people feel, it makes people feel sort of comfortable with the idea of a nuclear war, a nuclear conflict. And it really concerns me because this guy here, his name is Alan E. Hall. He apparently is some sort of a student or not a student, but he studies strategic defense. But in this article, he says nearly all major cities, like could you survive if nuclear war were to erupt and the U.S. was attacked? What parts would be low priority enough mostly to survive? And he says nearly all major cities, no one would waste the few nukes they have on non-military targets. In 2018, there isn't enough nukes to take out the U.S. or any other country. So this is an older thing, but it was updated. The world has 75% less nuclear weapons with only 10% of the destructive force they once had. I disagree with that. The places that would get hammered in the U.S. are our military nuclear installations. The Russians have to commit over 60% of their strategic nuclear forces just to cover our ICBMs. Our ICBMs are considered a nuclear sponge, soaking up the vast majority of any force launching a first strike on the USA, and they are located in the middle of nowhere. We put them there on purpose just for this reason. So he's painting a picture, and I would view this to some degree as a form of propaganda. Maybe others will disagree with me. But this article is designed to make people kind of feel like, oh, it's not as big a deal as some people make it out to be. I disagree. I think a nuclear war will destroy our way of life. It will destroy our countries if we have an all-out nuclear war. Even a limited nuclear conflict will forever, for the rest of our lives, and probably for generations, completely change the way we live and it will have devastating consequences for our countries. We
Absolutely.
can't afford to have this happen.
Absolutely. And you only have to look back to 9/11, which was a pretty significant incident of itself, to see what type of impact that has on a culture and a society. And it was pretty major. And it was devastating. It's not nuclear war devastating, but it gives you a little piece into what that would look like. And these things aren't small either. They'll cover massive areas. 9/11 wouldn't compare, but it would give you 9/11 does give you somewhat of a picture a little bit as to what type of devastation that type of devastation will play on a society. And I mean, we all remember the war on terrorism after the fact, and there was a lot of fear with everything that happened after.
See, the other reason I disagree with what he's saying is we know that some of the nuclear weapons they have today are up to 1,000 times more powerful than the bombs they dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in World War II. And, well, some people may feel comfortable with the idea of a nuclear war. I'm not. And I also disagree with him saying that cities won't be targeted. I think cities will be targeted. The Russians have, I believe it's well over 3,000 nuclear weapons. And they will be targeting places like Washington, D.C. They'll be, I think, probably targeting industrial areas like Detroit.
Means of manufacturing, so anywhere that is doing petroleum refinery and that sort of thing.
That's right. So even a place like Sarnia, Ontario might be taken out.
Which it's my understanding that even Hitler had that on his hit list if he was to come to North America, like that was devised.
So now we don't know. Who knows what the Russians might have planned or where they would send those ICBMs? But if they have over 3,000 of them, and they have more than the NATO countries, that's the reality. And if they have over 3,000 of them, that's a lot of targets. That's more than enough to target military targets, and then they can go after industrial manufacturing. And it's not just the initial blast that's the problem, it's the nuclear fallout afterward, and the people who would be burned, that would suffer from radiation sickness, that would develop cancers, and
birth defects.
That's right. So the effects of it would be felt immediately and over a very long period of time as well. And yes, it's true, you can survive a nuclear conflict. You can survive it, but I'm not sure that I would want to, depending on how you survive. Like, did you survive, but now you're sick? And now you're going to die a slow, painful death, or did you survive and you're completely well? Well, that's another thing. But what does survive mean?
And your quality of life after, right? Everything else. We wouldn't be able to do this right now, that's for sure.
Roy Patterson says, I read from a reliable source that they don't have 3,000, they have 6,000. That may actually be the case. Maybe that may be true.
Yeah, I mean, based off of Popular Mechanics, March 3rd, 2022, they had stated some of the nuclear weapons today are over 3,000 times as powerful as the bomb dropped on Hiroshima.
And then there are other methods of delivering these things too, as the Baba Yaga says. More worried about the dirty bombs carried in suitcases that are in the U.S. now that will be set off in major cities, and that's a major threat. And that's why the whole thing with those missiles coming from Iran last night show how this can get so complicated so quickly. If Iran or some other country decides to target the United States with nuclear weapons, we may not even know where they came from. And if it's a terrorist group that hits the US or Canada with, say, a suitcase bomb or a dirty bomb that spreads radiation, right? And it's a terrorist group, well, then how do you retaliate with a nuclear response? Maybe you can't, because you don't even really know where to send it. Where do you send your ICBM if it's a terrorist group? Do you take out a city in another country? It's not necessarily a government that's done it. Or maybe, in this case, though, with escalation through Russia, if it's Iran that does it, do you target Russia or do you target Iran? And the attack may not come from ICBMs. It might come from within the country with a bomb delivered in the back of a truck. It could be in the form of a suitcase bomb. So everything's more complicated. And I think now more than ever, it shows why NATO, the United States, Canada, we should be a lot more careful about meddling in foreign affairs, meddling, in provoking countries to the point where we end up with wars. And this one in particular shows why. Because every time we go in, whether it's Iraq, Afghanistan, Somalia, Yemen, Kuwait, goes down the line, right? It just creates all these complications.
What else didn't help tensions this week is that India had accidentally fired a missile into Pakistan. And I had learned that day that article came out that India and Pakistan both have nukes. And India and Pakistan don't like each other because there's a big kind of fight over water in that region. So that doesn't exactly help tensions either. It doesn't matter if the intent is good or bad or not intentional.
So it's just, and then we see all this loose talk on even channels like Fox News, where they're rattling the sabers, and you've got the neocons and the hawks out calling for, an escalation over there. We saw Lindsey Graham talking about how he thought the Russians were ready to nuke a Ukrainian city just to demoralize the enemy, when he didn't know anything of the sort, really. He's just making that up, speculating maybe, or maybe saying it because he wants to inflame things. Anyway you slice it, I think it was irresponsible, because it does throw fuel on a fire at a time when we really need to dial things down. So I'm just really worried about it. I see that we have a new generation that has just been living with nuclear weapons, and people have been living with nuclear weapons under the shadow of nukes for so long that I think people have just become a little bit too comfortable. And even this war in Ukraine, I think a lot of people are just going about their daily lives. They're not worrying about it or thinking about it too much. They're just sitting back thinking, oh, it's just another one of those wars in another far off land. I don't really need to worry about it too much. I'll just watch just watch sports this weekend on TV, drink my beer, and go back to work on Monday, and all will be well. Don't have to think about it too much. It's unfortunate it's happening, but it's just way over there in another country. But in this case, I don't think so. This one's different, because this is so because the NATO, United States, Canada, we're right up in Vladimir Putin's grill here. We've pissed him off. Well, we didn't, Brendan. You and I didn't, but Biden, NATO, Trudeau, we're all pissing him off. And this isn't like pissing off, Muammar Gaddafi, and then you're going to go in there later and take the guy out. It ain't like that.
No.
This is way more serious. You're pissing off the leader of Russia, who has the ability to wipe out every major city. Like, he's got nukes. We need to be very careful here.
Well, I did pull up the simulator again if you want to run that through.
The simulator?
Yeah, so this here is the nuclear weapons simulator. You pinpoint on a map, and it's going to show you the radius of effect that it's going to have on it. So, with my research, I have indicated that some of the highest power nuclear weapons or bombs are 300 kilotons, and so you put that in there. And so we hit the financial sector, and look what happens. And that's the blast radius. And everything within the inner circle would be gone. All of this, gone.
Like,
And
if you're in the center of that, you are instantly vaporized.
Yeah, and look how much of that space it covers just in that little bit. That's New York, like, gone. The financial sector of America.
Just in the blink of an eye.
Yeah.
Gone. Just gone. Now, you tell me, like, okay, so maybe you're in Jersey City, maybe you survive it, right?
Yeah.
But then maybe you're blinded because you looked at it. Then maybe you're suffering from some sort of radiation burns or radiation sickness. The fallout's coming down. You need to get into a house or get into some sort of shelter within the first 15 minutes after the detonation, because after that, the fallout starts coming down, and it rains down upon people all over there, all over the place. And that fallout can, the wind will pick it up and it will blow it potentially for hundreds of miles. And people exposed can get sick, and it can kill people.
Then it contaminates the water and the food, the fish.
And if you think that, and once this happens, this sets off an electromagnetic pulse. Electronic devices won't work. There won't be any power. It's going to take out all the power there. If you remember when we had the big power failure all up and down the eastern seaboard here, and it affected Ontario, like the whole system went down. You set off a nuke. You think that's not going to knock out the power all over the eastern seaboard? That's going to disrupt everything. Like, that's going to knock out the power everywhere. That's just from one nuclear blast. They launch thousands of these things, or even hundreds, and they explode. It's going to knock out power everywhere. There won't be any power. The food supply, like fruits, milk, cows, milk gets contaminated with radiation. It holds it. The fallout, the dust, the radioactive dust from this stuff gets into everything. You can be eating it, breathing it in, and not even know it. This would be a disaster beyond anything we've could ever think of. That's right. No, there wouldn't be any hospitals. Where are you going to go to the hospital to get treatment? There won't be any medical care. The hospitals will be vaporized. That one attack would bring down the United States. All you have to do is look at what happens after, a hurricane in one area or a tornado, and look at what goes into trying to bring things back online, right? We're ill prepared to deal with this. I don't know if there is a way to prepare for it. And you
Well,
can
I think you would have had to have prepared long before now. And look at
and I see
that.
people
One of these 300 kilotons covers the whole thing.
yeah. I don't care if there are fewer weapons today. The reality is, if this thing, if we ever get engaged in a nuclear war, say goodbye to everything we've known, because it ain't coming back. Not in our lifetime. Not the way that it was.
No, I
And
can see it now.
I'm just really worried because like that Quora article, the talk on television that I'm seeing, people just with this attitude that it's like, we could have a limited nuclear exchange. It wouldn't be that bad. I think it'd be worse. It would be.
Wouldn't be that bad. That's disgraceful. That's the type of talk that'll get us killed.
Well, exactly. That's exactly right, and that's why I that Quora is a left wing rag. Okay, online. It's a propaganda machine as much as any other legacy media outlet. And what they've done here with this article is they're, like many other mainstream media outlets, they're downplaying the dangers of a nuclear conflict. I have to ask myself why. Somebody wants this, or some people want this to happen. It's pretty obvious. Some people would like to see this happen. They've got toys and they want to use them.
Yeah, they've had them a long time. Not going away.
And when Vladimir Putin says he's threatened to use nukes if NATO escalates in Ukraine, the reason he has done that is because he cannot compete. He can't survive a full-out assault by NATO because they outgun him in conventional weapons. He's just not powerful enough that way, but he has more nukes. And he also has better defense systems capable of shooting down, taking out ICBMs as they're coming in. Some will make it through, but Russia could, as a nation state, survive a nuclear conflict because of their defensive systems. And because they have far more nukes, they could completely devastate the U.S. So I believe, just because of the technology, Russia has the upper hand here. And because they are outgunned conventionally, he has much more incentive. He's more likely to go to the nukes first.
Yeah,
and when he says he would, I think we should take him seriously.
Yeah, I think ultimately, it's like you said, because of that numerical superiority in manpower and equipment, if he feels like he can't win, he's probably more liable just to break everything, regardless of what the consequences to him will be. Because it's, well, I've lost, so might as well.
Well, if he's backed into a corner and he doesn't have, and he looks like he's going to lose, and he knows what's coming, then he goes to the next level, maybe, right? So Mario says people have no clue. If it happens, there won't be just Russia and USA, but China, India, Pakistan, Israel, France, and England. Yeah, that's right. Because those other countries, it's not just Russia and the United States anymore. These other countries all have nukes as well. North Korea, I think, has nukes, right?
Yeah,
So, and there's
they
some,
brag
because
about
there's,
that.
right, so there's some other countries that probably have them but haven't made it public.
Yeah. And yeah, we mentioned earlier in the show here already that yeah, we learned this. I learned this week that Pakistan had nuclear weapons, and I was like, "What?"
Yeah, question everything says Russia could win. Yeah, that is why this is so dangerous. If we were still facing a scenario of mutually assured destruction, as was the case through the 80s and the 90s, right? Um, I don't think that we would be facing this kind of danger. But if you have one side, like Russia, which thinks they have the upper hand in a nuclear exchange, where they think they could survive it, and if they don't go that way because they're going to be defeated through conventional warfare, what do you think he's going to do? It gives him a lot more incentive to push the button, right? I think it just scares the living daylights out of me. And the thing that really scares me is just all this rhetoric that we're hearing through the mainstream media, and it's the same people that led us down the garden path into Iraq talking about weapons of mass destruction. It's the same people that have dragged us into, a series of senseless, expensive wars that have cost us all so much blood and treasure over the decades. And we keep letting them do it to us. If we let them do this, it's the end of our civilization as we know it. Will there still be people alive? Yeah, I think there will be. Will there be a country? I don't know. I don't know. I
Well,
kind of doubt it.
and I mean, another point worth making is, as somebody mentioned, that if the power grid goes down, the United States will fall. And there's so much of the United States population that doesn't know how to live without technology.
Yeah, John Merrick says if the food chain is taken offline, 90% of people will die within 3 months. That's part of it too. It's like all of our systems would break down. We're complaining about the supply chain breaking down now. We can't get parts to factories in time. We have shortages of chips for cars. Everything is breaking down. What do you think is going to happen when you have entire cities blown off, wiped off the face of the face of the earth? What do you think is going to happen when you have other areas, military and nuclear installations that have also been obliterated? Now you have some areas that are radioactive for a considerable period of time. Eventually, they can be inhabited again, but not for a while. So you wouldn't even be able to send people in there to
No.
provide aid or, right? You take out an entire city, like you take out New York City, that's a major economic hub. Where are you going to? It's going to disrupt everything.
Yeah, it's the
Everything.
financial capital of the United States.
It's not even just the money. It's like we're warehousing, manufacturing, trucking, hubs, right? Transportation hubs, everything disrupted. And if you have that happen, it's not just the nuclear blast that kills people, it's everything that comes after. It's the complete breakdown of society. It's emergency services, doctors, hospitals, food supply, fire departments. Um, people will starve. People will starve to death.
I don't think people quite grasp or understand in North America or in the West in general. They don't understand that it's a miracle that things more often than not work. You buy a plane ticket, the plane ticket says be there for X time, and you'll arrive at your destination at X time. You wait at a bus stop. The bus comes every 30 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So on and so forth. Like, these are miracles of modern society. You don't get that in third world developing countries. You don't get that because they don't have the systems that are in place. And these systems are very complicated, where you go to the grocery store and there's food. And there's at least 20 other steps that are involved before that food even gets there. These things are miracles by a long shot.
And the government has already disrupted things so much. I had a plumbing problem in my house this weekend, and I had to go to 3 different hardware stores to get the parts that I needed to fix the pipes properly. There are supply chain issues right now. What's going to happen if we get engaged, if there's a nuclear conflict and entire cities are destroyed, or, people don't get it. When the pandemic hit, there was a shortage of toilet paper for weeks, and people didn't know what to do. What am I going to do? I can't get toilet paper. You think the toilet paper, there isn't going to be any toilet paper. Probably not, right? And then I see people prepping. I see them getting bug out bags and so on. And okay, it's good to prepare, but I don't even get that. So what are you going to do? You're going to pack a backpack full of stuff and then run into the woods, right? In the middle of the winter, if you're living in Canada or maybe some northern state, right? And you're going to run into the woods where you're going to try and survive with your bug out bag. Some of these things don't make sense to me because there's no support for you if you're out in the wilderness. I mean, I get it if you're going to drive away to another city or find some place to go. Yeah. But I think just in people's minds, it's like, oh my God, the first thing I'm going to do is take my bug out bag and run away to the wilderness where I won't have to deal with the fallout or the zombie apocalypse, right? And I'll just live in the woods and I've got my bug out bag, so I've got everything I need to survive. I don't think so. You'll probably be okay for a few days. Then you'll probably die because you get to be eaten by a wolf, or you'll freeze to death, or a bear will rip your face off, or you're gonna sleep outside. You're gonna have to make a lean-to out of a bunch of branches or something, right? You're gonna How long can you survive in the wilderness with your bug out bag?
Well, that depends.
Society is going to break down, man.
That depends on a number of factors, though. The odds won't be in your favor, though. I get what you're saying. The odds won't be in your favor, but you have to remember, generations of North Americans have come here and did just that with even less than a bug out bag.
Yeah, well, they were a little more resilient, I think. If you take some, you know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying, though, right?
You take a Torontonian, somebody from Toronto, and you drop them in the middle of the woods. Yeah, they're going to get eaten by a wolf.
It snowed today. I had to walk my dog. My hands were cold after 10 minutes. I don't know. I don't think people are going to do well running off to the wilderness. Let's go to Algonquin Park in Ontario and just with my bug out bag and just live off the land until all the nuclear fallout is gone. You're going to be there a while.
Well, if you do have a bug out bag, you should have a way better plan than that to start off with.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I made a few people laugh. Susan Parker's. Yeah. Well, it's true though, right? Like,
it made me laugh. I couldn't help it.
Yeah. Like if the zombie apocalypse happens, I'm probably not leaving my house.
Yeah.
Now, if the nuclear fallout is coming and I can get out of the way, then I'm probably going to drive to another city or another town or some, more remote location. Sure. But I'm not going to run into the woods with my bug out bag. I might take my bug out bag, but I'm probably going to find some place where there's still other people and support systems in place somewhere. But everybody else is going to be trying to get there too.
it does make it a lot easier. And to your point, Rick Walker, I have worked remote jobs, essentially 100 kilometers south of Hudson's Bay for a logging company at one point. When I was out there, and this was in January, mind you, it's freezing. It was like negative 40. Absolutely freezing. But here's the thing. When you get there, there's absolutely nothing. I was there for over 2 months. I saw zero wildlife. Nothing. Not a thing. Didn't see a moose. Didn't see a bear. Didn't see a mouse. Didn't see a rabbit. There was nothing up there.
That's got to screw with your mind,
Oh,
right?
it
People
does.
people can't. I could barely take being locked down because it starts to play with your mind, right? We have mental health issues with people committing suicide because of being locked down. What are you going to do when you're, living in the wilderness? And those bears that are going to rip your face off, they're going to be like mega bears because they're going to be like radioactive and they will grow to be really, really, really big bears, like
Radioactive
Godzilla bears.
Bearzilla.
I don't mean to make light of it, okay? Because this is a really serious, dark topic, but my God. My God. Nuclear weapons are only to scare us, just like the pandemic. I'm scared
Yeah, I'm more scared of this than I am the pandemic.
by far.
Yeah.
By far. Scared of this. I'm scared of this.
Mega bears.
Mega bears.
What was
That's
the last
like-
one about rabbits? Oh, there was one in there about rabbits.
Let's see if I can find that comment. Smokey and the bear gets his revenge. Yeah, evaporated. I don't know. Am I still stuck in the 1970s and 1980s? Like, I don't know, folks. You tell me. Am I paranoid, or what do you guys think? What do you guys think? I think that it's just being downplayed too much. I think that there's too much complacency. I just I think they're playing fast and loose with their language, and I'm petrified because I think we are closer to it than anyone realizes. Right now. If all you eat is rabbits and squirrels, you die of malnutrition.
Yes,
I don't
that's
know.
true. That's
Is that true?
because there's no fat on the rabbits. A lot of U.S. Army survival courses teach you to stay away from rabbits for a lot of the parts, because if all you eat is rabbits, it will get you.
I didn't know that.
Yep.
I didn't know that. See, and that there goes my whole survival plan, because I have a lot of rabbits around my place,
Yeah.
and I've always thought I'll just set up traps and I'll just trap rabbits and I'll eat hearty, and be able to survive, but I guess not. Okay, so 234 Cheech says I'm engaging in fear mongering. Am I? Maybe I'm just too stuck in my ways. Maybe nukes are good. Maybe nukes are okay. Let's just go for it. Star says no. Pretty much have it. Exploring a scenario. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong. Like I've been doing a little bit more research on this to see if I'm out to lunch. Okay. And I am finding information out there from people who are saying, and these are supposed to be experts, who are saying that because the arsenals have been reduced and some of the nuclear warheads are not as big, and because it's more strategic, and they can They don't seem to be that worried about it.
Yeah.
I don't know. Me, I'm pretty worried about it.
Joseph Morrow asked, "What about partridge? Partridge are pretty good diet supplements. Look, it's not you can't eat rabbit in that sort of situation. It's that you really need to be careful and supplement your diet with other stuff because it's a lot better than nothing."
Yeah, mix in a deer or two, Rick. Yeah, well, that's okay. I don't see as many deer around here though, but yeah,
Oh, I do.
did you have deer up around your place?
Yeah, look, I hit it with my car.
How long ago was that?
That was on Highway 40.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean the deer was fine. I mean I drove past him and I clipped him with the car and off came his antler. I went looking for him. This is all I found.
Yeah, I hit a deer once with my car. Just clipped him. Um, yeah, and it's a 1, 2, 3. What are we fighting for? Don't bother. I don't give a
Give a
damn.
damn. We're going
Next
off to
stop is
Vietnam.
Vietnam. That's right.
Bet you thought I wouldn't know that song, eh? Hey, hey.
Well, you're just a youngin' compared to me.
I know, but I know Country Joe.
The Tsar bomb. This is the Russian bomb. Biggest man-made explosion in history. Look at the size of that.
Ooh.
See, it's one thing to detonate these things in remote locations. That's scary enough. But you do that in a populated area or even an industrialized area or just
And believe it or not, a lot of these remote areas that they tested nukes in the Arctic, it has impacted First Nations people in various degrees, albeit more long term because the wind blows all the fallout around and that sort of thing. So I mean, it has hurt people.
and I don't trust the government. I'm sorry, I just don't. Even through all, a lot of this uh, testing, they they exposed people intentionally to the fallout, to the radiation, just to see what it would do to them. I don't. How can we trust any of these maniacs?
Also, I just thought of something, Rick. There's a massive possibility that Joe Biden might have forgotten the nuke code.
It's possible. It's entirely possible. That might be the only thing that saves us. Is his senility.
Okay.
I can't remember the code. I can't get it.
I think it was Jill's birthday. Oh, what's Jill's birthday? Can't remember.
Nat Art says Russia with China can win a conventional war, hands down.
Yeah.
Possibly, yeah. I mean, if you combine those two, China's pretty big now. They are a superpower, I think, So that's something to consider too. That's why this whole scenario is so much more complicated than it used to be. It used to be pretty simple. Nobody wants to fire the nukes because they know that if they do, they're going to get destroyed. So nobody did it. But now everything's just so different, right? The dynamics are different.
Yes.
That's, I think, why it's so much more dangerous. Even though we don't have as many warheads, the likelihood of it happening is it just seems more likely, more possible. Rondo Park is full of deer. Yeah, that's in right near where I live here. I don't think you can go hunting there though. They just like to cull them every once in a while. Muskrat is good. Have you ever had muskrat?
Yes, I sure have. I've eaten muskrat.
I've never done that. I don't know if I can eat anything with the name rat in it.
No, it's fine. It's good. I'm from Northern Ontario. I've eaten beaver, muskrat, moose, deer, um, squirrel. Never a possum or anything like that, though.
So, what's your opinion? How close are we to some kind of a nuclear conflict? Is it a real threat here, or am I am I just being paranoid?
Look, I think that all we need to do is look at the fact. The fact is that the tensions are very high right now, and when you have a case where the tensions are really high, you have more likelihood of a nuclear exchange between superpowers, and this is why we should be concerned about it. And you know what? You should have at least a 24 or 72-hour emergency kit in your own home or more. I would recommend that you have that you have um, like working flashlights, emergency candles, enough food to get you by for a few days. Water is a very important one. Make sure that you have extra water. One thing I've always done is I've filled old cranberry jugs or gallon jugs with water, and I put them in my deep freezer. And so in the event that the power is out for any length of time, it'll keep the freezer colder for longer, and also you could use the water in it after it thaws. So there's all kinds of things that you should be prepared for. And I am by no means Mr. Bug Out Bag guy, but you should at least be able to be prepared to hunker down in your home in the event of an emergency for sure. Like, that cannot be under stress.
Well, I have looked at some of these. I've watched some videos online in the last few days. How do you survive a nuclear blast? You have to get inside and stay there for a couple of weeks, and you have to get in there within the next, within 10 or 15 minutes. Um,
Well,
you know,
first
but
you need to get a primary school desk. That's what you need.
you can crawl underneath to duck and cover. Right.
No, I'm kidding. Sorry, no. Yes. So,
But
I mean,
you think back, like that's where it was, duck and cover, and then there was, I think it was in the 70s. They talked about having people evacuate entire cities if necessary, but they thought they would have like a few days' notice, and then it came to light that what they were really talking, what the real reason they wanted to relocate the populations was because if they could get people to leave the city, it would create additional targets for the Russians so that they would have to target multiple locations and expend more of their arsenal at one time. So they were using human beings as traveling targets in their strategy, which was inhumane in itself. Again,
yeah.
how can we trust our government? Oh, just run over there. Hey, Joe, let's get them to run over there because then they'll nuke them over there too. That was an actual thing. They don't care about us. They're quite happy to just let us get vaporized or worse.
Well, yeah. I beg to see how the government could be tested at all after so much has come out from the 50s to the 60s, where the government has committed some of the biggest atrocities, and some of those are just like MK Ultra, which is an actual thing, and that has killed both Canadian and American citizens. It has ruined people's lives. It has destroyed people's brains.
Yeah, so, so yeah, these videos that I've watched, it's like, well, you ran that video from that TikToker
Yeah.
as part of that, I guess, group of social influencers, right? That the Biden administration is trying to tap into right now to
Gen Z for change.
Gen Z for change,
Yeah.
right? And that one TikToker was talking about nuclear conflict. Any way you can bring that back up again? Is that easy to find or maybe not?
Yeah, it's easy to find.
Let's play that again because this is exactly what I'm talking about as well. This was a young woman with a video aimed at youth, and she's downplaying the dangers I think, in my opinion, downplaying the dangers of a nuclear conflict. And this is one of the reasons we have an entire generation now growing up where they're sort of like not that concerned about what might happen if nukes are launched. I just think it's really dangerous to downplay this stuff the way that they are. I think they're doing it on purpose. I think it is a propaganda part of their propaganda campaign so that they can open this up and put nukes on their list of options, real options, if they choose to use them. TikTok is Chinese-owned social media. That's true, and I'm not on there.
Yeah, I know. I did it for work and research purposes.
Yeah, and Sonia says they can't survive without GPS or Twitter, but they know all about nukes. Yeah, that's right. You, if there's a nuclear conflict, today's generation, they're all toast. Not because they're going to get nuked, but because they won't know the first thing to do. They won't be able to survive without their cell phones and their digital metaverse. They don't know how to read a map. They don't know how to survive. They in a linear world, they'll be lost. World War III uses nukes. World War IV uses bows and arrows. That's right. I think you're right. I think Trump made China sell TikTok, right? Did he force?
I didn't think he forced them to do.
I don't think that came about. There was talk about TikTok being forced to sell off the North American portion of it or something like that. I could be wrong about that. I could be wrong.
There has been investigations into TikTok though, where they reverse engineered it, sort of, and what they found is like it has access into just about everything inside your device that you possibly have, which I really wasn't too happy about getting TikTok because I hate TikTok, and so will all of you after I'm done showing you this clip here.
Yeah, they don't know how to use a phone book, government listings. Here in the Netherlands, enough to smoke even can grow your own 5 plants here. I don't know what that's got to do with it. I guess I missed something.
He's talking about marijuana, I think.
Yeah, will Metaverse feature virtual nukes for their followers? Well, maybe. Especially if maybe the whole idea behind a nuclear exchange is to push everyone more quickly toward a transhuman future where we're all digitized and people think they're going to live forever as a silicon-based silicon chip or something. I don't know.
John made a really good point there that people have a lot of misconceptions about hunting. That it's actually a very complicated thing to do. That there's so many aspects of it. Like a deer can smell you from kilometers away. You step on a twig, the deer is gone. What time of day do you go looking for the animal? So on and so forth. And then with duck, you have the migratory patterns. And then you have, if you do actually successfully take down a duck, then you have to go trudging through swamp to go get it. These are all skills that, quite frankly, the West has left behind, and that Canada is not so much the hunting-based economy that it once was, because they're like in my parents' generation, a lot of them supplemented their diets with wild food all the time, partridge, deer, and fish, and these are all skills that are not very easy to learn, and they take a lifetime to master.
Not only that, but some of the food that you might go to try to, even if you go hunting, who's to know what the scenario might actually be at the time? The food, even wild food sources can be contaminated with radiation depending on where the fallout lands and the impact of that. You can't just go pick fruit off a tree if it's been exposed to the radiation and the radioactive fallout. You can't eat it. If you do, you will die. So it's just not that simple. And it's just not that simple.
No,
It isn't the blast that kills everyone. It isn't just the blast. It's the breakdown of society afterward. It's the supply chains, groceries. You're not going to your Safeway to pick up your toilet paper the day after the nuclear detonation. It ain't gonna happen.
Well, yeah, I mean, not only that, we're in a civilization that murders each other for a Furby on Black Friday. So, could you imagine if it was for something that was going to keep somebody's family fed?
Not only that, but if everything falls apart, people will be looting, breaking into businesses, breaking into people's homes. Society will break down. You're gonna have shootings on the streets, violence. Society will break down. I'm convinced of that. Absolutely convinced of it.
And in
If
some
it gets
ways,
to
it
that.
already has. If we take a look at that, do you want me to
So,
roll
yeah,
this clip?
let's roll this young lady and listen to her again.
So I've seen a lot of videos about what to do if there's nuclear fallout, which don't worry, there will not be nuclear fallout. Everything's okay. But in a hypothetical situation where there was, the best advice is for everyone to stay inside their homes for at least 24 hours, trying to, ideally stay inside your home and not go outside for anything for about a week if you can. Do y'all think Republicans are gonna? No, they wouldn't, would they? Do you think they're gonna be like, it's my right to go outside. Nuclear fallout doesn't exist. They're lying about the death rate. My daughter has a beautiful face that has not seen the outdoors in 24 hours. This is communism. So I've seen a lot of videos about what to do if there's nuclear fallout, which don't worry, there will not be nuclear fallout. Everything's okay.
Yeah.
But in a hypothetical situation where there was, the best advice is for everyone to stay.
You see what I mean? It's just like she's getting paid to do that. Like Biden, the Biden administration is putting up money for her and a bunch of these other TikTokers to produce videos like that. And so the message is pretty light. And it's like, well, what if there's a nuclear war? Well, there's not going to be any nuclear fallout, so don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. But if there were, hypothetically, all you have to do is lock down for about a week in your house, and then everything will be fine. No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
That's the modern equivalent to me of duck and cover. And it is government financed again. That to me is government propaganda. That to me is dangerous because that just manufactures public consent for the use of nuclear weapons because it removes any objection or a lot of it, resistance to it, because it makes people, especially younger people, feel more comfortable with it. It's like, oh, well, if there's a nuclear exchange, it's not that big of a deal. All I have to do is just stay inside for at least 24 hours, maybe a week lockdown. I did that during the COVID thing. It's not a big deal. I can do that. Oh, those Republicans, they're always such alarmists. And yeah, she's right. They're all a bunch of crazy conspiracy theorists. Any of those conservatives, all they care about is their bloody rights, right? Like, and
You know,
make a joke.
you know what's funny is I'm just thinking of this right now, Rick Walker. I would bet dollars for donuts every time that more Republicans would survive a post-apocalyptic situation than Democrats.
I'd bet you. I'm with you. I would bet on that too. I think so. I think that conservatives, because of their mindset, they're in a much better place to survive through adversity than snowflakes.
Well, that's usually the population that learns like survival skills or hunts and fish and those types of things that are going to make you successful ultimately. And they're already the people who. I mean, most of them would already have guns anyway, so I mean, all they would have to do is look for other people who have stuff and say, "Well, this here stuff you got is now mine."
Yeah. So, oh, man, I don't know. That I it it is the propaganda that really got me worried.
Yeah, yeah, for
I
sure.
mean, I don't normally walk around going, "Oh my God, like there might be a nuclear war." I don't normally think about it. I'm not paranoid in that way. What got me paranoid, honestly, Brendan, was that clip that you ran the other night, which we just ran again. That was the one that really triggered me, if you want to use that word. But that's what really got me worried. Then I started to look at it more, and I started to think about other things that I'm seeing. All the hawks talking about, the pro-war hawks that I'm seeing even on Fox News, and not just on Fox, but CNN, MSNBC, like this is all pro-war stuff, and they don't seem to be too concerned about the nuclear aspect of it.
No, they don't.
So I'm petrified.
No, they don't. I don't think they have a full grasp or understanding, and this political group that we have shown, we've already seen what they're all about. They're a bunch of incoherent kids, basically, that are not able to follow logic, or not able to see past their short-term objectives.
CNIB Positive mostly says, has everyone forgot about nuclear winter?
No, we have not.
The guy who wrote, I'm pretty sure it was him, might have been another person that was downplaying the dangers of a nuclear conflict. They're saying that a nuclear winter wouldn't happen. And I am not an expert. I'm just a layman like everyone else here, and I've just been taking note of it. It's the information end of it that really piqued my interest with regard to this subject right now. Mostly that's what really got me going on it. But the nuclear winter thing, I don't know. Like, I'm hearing like, oh no, nuclear winter wouldn't happen. Again, it's just like not even something to be concerned about. I've seen information up about that stuff.
Here, I came across this article a while ago, and this is pretty left-leaning altogether. And they talk about the case for nuclear winter canceling out global warming. This is what goes through the liberals' minds. That's what they think about. Oh, maybe it'll cancel. See, it's not that bad. It'll get rid of global warming and climate change. It's like, give me a break and give your head a shake.
What does the article say? Does it really like talk about that in a serious way?
Yeah, so it goes, nuclear war was very much a front of mind issue during the fraught political climate of the Cold War era. Since then, atomic saber rattling has been less frequent through the never. Well, so it's pretty new, but it's never quite disappeared entirely. Outside of the direct annihilation caused by nuclear war, however, is the threat of nuclear winter. The basic concept is simple. In the aftermath of a major nuclear war, the resulting atmospheric effects could lead to a rapid cooling in global temperatures. Some say it couldn't even happen, while others, including a cartoon, suggest that varying degrees of humor suggests with varying degrees of humor that it could help cancel out the effects of global warming. But what is the truth? Hard data isn't really available, as thus far there has been no large-scale nuclear wars for scientists to measure. Several studies have explored the concept of nuclear winter, however, and explored potential effects. So the idea, of course,
and it goes into how that could happen. Basically, it
Yes.
spews a lot of ash and particles,
Debris.
particulate matter into the atmosphere, blocks out the sun, and we all freeze to death, right? Because the sun can't get through and the temperature of the earth drops. But
Which has happened with volcanoes in the history of the world, for sure.
yeah, to some degree, that's right. Yes.
Yeah. And I mean, you could say there was ice ages, but where was the ice age? It wasn't all just one ice age. There was ice ages in North America, and meanwhile Europe was fine, and then there was ice ages in Europe, vice versa.
Angry Mom 80 says, evidently Hiroshima is not taught in liberal schools anymore. I think that is true. There is not the history lessons seem to be almost non-existent in the school systems now. And any history that is being taught is rewritten history, revisionist history. And that's another reason, again, why this whole generation seems to just not be all that concerned. It's not a big deal. Of course, we would survive a nuclear exchange. More than that, I just think that it's just gone on so long that people just think it's never going to happen. They just don't really take it seriously because it's just never happened. Even when we've had close calls with radar systems malfunctioning and false alarms where nukes have almost been launched, people are aware of it, but then the day after they kind of forget about it and go back to their daily lives. And because it hasn't ever happened, I think people just think that it's just not going to.
And I mean, who can blame them though? At the same time, because to keep that type of burden in your head all the time is really not healthy, and human beings have a hard time getting a perspective on something like that because it's so far away and they have no idea what it looks like.
Well, I agree, that you can't just walk around worried all the time. And I think for the most part, there's been no need to live in a state of fear all the time because I think it has been more or less kept in check. And certainly, I think when the nuclear threat or the threat of mutually assured destruction was there, people didn't need to live in that much fear because it was so insane. I don't think either side was prepared to launch. But when we see our governments poking the bear, poking that Russian bear, provoking, pushing, prodding for over a decade, now we actually get a kinetic war in Ukraine, and Russia's pushing back, and now they're ramping up the propaganda, and now we're seeing, as I say, this propaganda saying that a nuclear conflict probably would be survivable. It wouldn't be that bad. Just all you got to do is just stay inside for at least 24 hours, maybe a week, just lock down. Everything will be fine. But don't worry, it's not going to happen. Oh, well, you know what makes me really worried is the fact that they're even talking about it. If it wasn't a threat, if it wasn't something we needed to worry about, they wouldn't be talking about it. They wouldn't be downplaying it. It's like the biolabs. It's like they admitted it, but now they're saying that it's not true. So they confirmed that it was real, and then they denied that they exist. And they denied that they were engaged in anything wrong. But it's the fact that they're even talking about it tells me that there's a real thing there. When asked, does Ukraine have a biological weapons program by Marco Rubio, what did she say? What's her face again? Victoria Nuland said, she says, she didn't say no. If they didn't, the answer would just be no. No, they don't, and we don't. No, that's not what we got. What did we get? We got this very carefully worded answer from a woman who was clearly very uncomfortable and stressed out, and then a massive global propaganda information campaign putting spin on it because they had to combat the evidence that was laid out by the Russians and others, including journalists in North America, in Canada, and the US, showing that it was a real thing. And now it's the same thing with this nuclear stuff. It's like, it's not going to happen. It's not really a big deal. But if it were to happen, it's totally survivable. So you should just be okay with us launching a few. It's not a big deal.
Or like Stephen Colbert put it, an extra few bucks is worth a clean conscience.
Lyle Foster says deterrent, saber rattling. Maybe it is. Maybe that's part of the strategy. Just like Putin, right? He's like threatening. Maybe it's just a lot of talk so that it's a deterrent, so that the Americans don't send actual troops into Ukraine. I get it. Maybe. And then on the other side, maybe the propaganda is just a form of deterrent. Maybe it is, but it's scaring the living daylights out of me. They seem way too comfortable with it.
Yeah. We are way too comfortable with it.
In the West, bioweapons are being used daily in the form of brainwashing children about sex and gender reassignment.
Yes. Absolutely.
Ukaine has COVID. Oh, yes. Obama. He does have COVID. He has COVID. He tested positive, and he's got a scratchy throat, and then posted today online saying that shows why it's so important to get vaccinated. So that's what Obama said.
Speaking of which, there's a story that came out about vaccination.
I have a question, though, Brendan. If the vaccines work, how come Obama got COVID?
You know,
why do we see all these? Isn't that weird?
It is weird. I wonder why.
So he got vaccinated.
If the first three didn't work, then why do you need a fourth one?
And then he got it, and then he says, "See, look, be like me. I got triple jabbed. I got COVID. Be like me. Well, you should do it too."
Well, this one's
so
really
that's Obama's
get you
message. And I'm not saying the vaccines don't work. I'm just saying Obama got 3. Be like me. Well, not me, him. I got 3. Be like me. That's like that's Obama's new slogan. And then you too can have COVID.
Yeah.
Just not as bad.
Which isn't even measurable quantifiably.
I don't know how you prove that.
Based off of a strain.
There's a new strain as of yesterday.
Yes, the news about coronavirus is picking up again, especially out of London. I'd seen similar news coming out of BBC and everything else. A new strain is coming out. And I've called it, and I'm still holding on to it, folks. The kids in Ontario did not go back to school after Easter break last year, so Easter time, April, kids did not go back to school. I am going to imply here that all of the emergency measures that all these countries have been lifting may be reinstated.
As soon as then? Yeah.
Yeah. That's how quickly it goes up.
What's this new strain called, or what is it? I didn't hear about this.
I don't know. I will look it up.
I wasn't planning on talking about anything related to any of this tonight, really. So this is all new to me. How come Fancy Socks got COVID, or he claims? Yeah. He got 3. He got 3 and said, "Be like me." Yay, COVID. They're all on Team COVID. How do they? This is insane. What an insane world we're living in. I got the first one. It was 95% effective. So then I got a second just to be sure. And then when I got my third one, that's when I got the COVID. Because I was 150% protected. What is the percentage effectiveness after the third one? Because it was 95 or 97% if you got the first one. And then if you got the second one, it was supposed to be like even more, right? And so what's the third one get you up to? Shouldn't it be like 180% or something by that point? I'm 180% protected. I'll take a quadruple over here. The 2 strains protein marrying, producing offspring. Imagine what happens when they nuke us and the coronavirus is exposed to radiation. And then we get this like the Godzilla coronavirus.
Could very well happen. Be a giant spike protein that just crushes people in cities.
Rick Walker 0 because the vaccine doesn't work at all in Omicron. But I would never say that because YouTube's right. And the vaccines work, and you should get 4 or 5 of them because it's the right thing to do, and we're all in it together. $75% up till 8 weeks effective. That's why you need boosters. Just like Obama. Worked good for him. See, I agree with you, Brendan. I think these lockdowns and masks and all this stuff, it's all coming back sooner than people probably think, because we've seen these medical experts already starting to talk about not just the coronavirus, but the flu and cold viruses. And they're concerned that they're all going to be out there circulating at the same time and combining to create a really bad scenario. So we're going to have to lock it all down again. They were talking about that the day they were announcing the masks being lifted in here in Ontario.
Mm-hmm. Of course. It's going to... Why should we think this year should be any different than last year or the year before that? So I'm very suspicious. I have PTSD over this, basically, where I'm so bothered by all this stuff happening. It's absolutely crazy how it doesn't stop.
I did hear about Deltacron. Is that the one that you're referring to, Brendan, the new one?
Yeah, I think so. I can't remember the name of it.
I heard about that a few days ago. Deltacron. It's like a cross between Delta and Omicron. Julie Waters says, I'm sure that will happen just before the midterms.
Yeah, so they could...
The Unicrona.
Unicrona?
Yeah, hang on. I'm just going to go look something up. I'll be right back.
Oh, they're saying it's the variant that wasn't. So maybe not Deltacron. I can't remember, but I had seen some other things. But interestingly enough, I had come across this Pfizer CEO said a 4th booster shot is necessary because the other ones work so well. This was printed today. Pfizer CEO Albert Bourla said on Sunday that a fourth dose of the COVID-19 vaccine will be necessary to continue to help keep hospitalizations manageable and sicknesses more mild. I mean, how do you keep things more mild? Either it's mild or it's not. Right now, the way that we have seen, it is necessary a fourth booster right now. The protection that you're getting from the third, it is good enough, actually quite good for hospitalizations and death, Borla said, while appearing on CBS's Face the Nation. It's not that good against infections, but doesn't last very long. But we are just submitting those data to the FDA, Food and Drug Administration, and then we will see what the experts also will say outside Pfizer, he added. In August, the FDA fully approved Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine for people at least 16 years of age and older. A third dose of Pfizer's vaccine has been granted emergency use authorization. Bourla told CNBC on Saturday of his company's plans to submit Delta for a fourth COVID-19 dose. It's clear that there is a need in an environment of Omicron to boost the immune system, he said while appearing on CNBC's Squawk Box. Countries including Israel, Chile, Germany have already begun recommending the fourth COVID-19 doses for high-risk groups. I believe Canada has already too. Don't quote me if I'm wrong. Don't quote me on that directly, but I'm quite certain Canada has to a bit of a degree. And now, interestingly enough, this is the CEO of Pfizer drug pushing on international television. Anybody else see a problem with that other than me?
Well, we should be careful what we say because we are still on YouTube. Unfortunately, the Rumble channel still not working tonight. Some technical problems still over there with those feeds. So hopefully we get that worked out for everybody tomorrow night. And once we're more established on those platforms, those other video platforms, we can speak more openly about all of these kinds of topics. But until then, we have to be guarded in what we say and careful so as not to spread disinformation.
Yes, we are not medical doctors. We do not advise or recommend that you take medical advice from us. It's up to you and your doctor to make those decisions. So please, by all means.
Actually, no, it's up to the government to tell you what to do.
And the
And
CEO
you should just comply.
of Pfizer. Yeah, the CEO
You should
of
just
Pfizer.
comply. Do what they say.
Yeah.
It's good for you.
Mhm.
Just do it, and do it as often as possible because you just should. Don't question it. Do not ask any questions. Everything you need to know, you've already been told. Do not listen to us unless we're telling you to do this. But if we were saying anything else, just don't pay attention.
Yep.
Okay? So that's what you should do. Just do what the government says, always. 100%.
Especially the CEO of Pfizer.
Yeah. So go get your boosters, and when the nukes fall, just stay inside for 24 hours, maybe a week, and then you can go get your toilet paper. Everything will be fine. There you go. So enough of that.
Yeah.
What else can we talk about tonight, Brendan? I did want to show people some footage out of Calgary. You went to, this is a protest.
Mm-hmm.
You went to a protest of some kind yesterday, or demonstration, did you not? Or did you get by that? Did you get to go there?
Yeah, I did. I didn't get a chance to get footage necessarily. It was really cold.
Mm-hmm.
Really, really, really cold. It's very interesting. The crowds are kind of somewhat dwindling on it. There is quite a bit of people who are maybe past this, or they feel that the emergency orders in Ontario are going to be put to rest, but they are not put to rest yet, and they'll still be in place until about April 30th of 2022. And so the government can right now just declare a new lockdown if they wanted to, very simply. And I mean, as far as I'm concerned with the protest, I think that we really seriously need a cost benefit analysis on the damage of lockdowns and everything related to COVID that we've been through and that the government is subjected to its people. I think we absolutely need that. And you know what? If the government is so sure in their beliefs that these things are good for people, then they should have nothing to worry about. But they know it's not true, and we know it's not true. So that's why I don't think that would ever happen.
Well, here's a protest out of Calgary, and please be careful what you're saying, because I just received, just this minute, notification from YouTube that they've taken down more of our content for violating their terms of service, because apparently we're spreading lies and disinformation about the 2020 election, because we ran the Trump speech. So that entire broadcast has been deleted off YouTube now.
Actually, our other Trump speech got deleted too.
Mm-hmm.
I'm seeing a trend here.
Yes. So this is Calgary, where Calgary police stepped in and forcibly removed some pro-mask, pro-mandate counter-protesters away from a freedom protest, which up to that point, and I think even after, had been peaceful. And this was yesterday. And the counter-protesters apparently were blocking a road for over an hour.
Bro, I gotta go check on something.
So there you go. Question is, they blocked a road for an hour. Are they subjected to the same level of government scrutiny and oversight and enforcement as the truckers? So those were counter protesters that were being pushed back by police in Calgary. Pretty interesting. But bike abuse, arrest them. Yeah, you know, I don't like seeing the cops treat anybody like that. And I don't care if you're a freedom fighter or a pro-lockdown person. I don't like seeing people being abused or assaulted or hit with a bicycle. I just don't know, man. I have a lot of concerns about the way police handle things these days now. Too much. What are the other comments here? Nothing will happen. Sue Reading says, yeah. Tony says, no, they will get money added to their bank accounts. Yeah. Yeah. So the NDP counter protesters, I guess so. Is Twitter down? I don't know. Does Joe have a metal plate in its head for 2 botched brain surgeries that he sticks fridge magnets to? I think he tries to spell AEIOUY. Ms. Jensky says, Rick Walker, me neither. Yeah. It's abuse of power. Yeah. I got my 4th 30-day fascist book suspension for commenting on ivermectin is good for COVID. Apparently that was racist. Yeah. Everything is racist. I'm on Rumble and subscribe to you. Thank you. Appreciate that very much. Cops are Gestapo. Einsatzkräfte Commando of WEF, yeah. The government is not your best friend. Wake up, says Peter. Exactly. Exactly. Unless it's the vaccine, then just trust them. Just do whatever they say. Just do it. Just go for it. It'll be great. The info is forced by courts to come out. So far, science shows it should not have been emergency authorized. Sound advice, we aren't. Epic Catharsis, if you are a counter-protester at this point, how are you not a paid actor? Mason Free Party says you might see some strange northern lights tonight in Canada. CME is likely. CME. What is CME? CME. Breaking. The Financial Times reports the U.S. officials say Russia has asked China to assist it with military equipment for the war in Ukraine. And everything gets more complicated. And what are we going to do if things escalate with China, which is a major trading partner? They control our supply chains, our supply of pharmaceuticals now, much of even our food. Just about everything is manufactured in China these days, including auto parts. What are we going to do? What's the Biden plan to deal with that one? And, if we get backed into a corner, how will our governments respond? I think our politicians and these war hawks are way too arrogant, way too overconfident, way too eager to engage in conflict. I think that they've just had it too easy for far too long. They've been allowed to just get away with whatever they want. And this time, I'm afraid they've bitten off a little more than they can chew. Welcome back there, Brendan. I was just saying, Van Moore says, the Financial Times is reporting that U.S. officials say Russia has asked China to assist it with military equipment for the war in Ukraine. So I was just saying, this complicates things even further. And what are our insane leaders going to do if China becomes heavily involved? That China controls our pharmaceuticals, much of our food, almost most of our manufacturing at this point. Everything you buy comes from China, just about, except some of our, a lot of our raw resources like lumber
that we sell to them,
right? And some of our agricultural stuff.
Then they sell it back to us for way more.
What happens if everything falls apart with China? Look what happened even with COVID. We didn't have enough masks to supply the population when the government said everybody had to wear masks, right?
And then they said, oh, yeah, you don't need to wear a mask. Oh, we were just saying that because there wasn't enough supply chain. And it's like, really?
I just think I think they're overconfident. I think they're too eager to engage in conflict. I think that they're too quick to go to war. I think they like it, and we're all paying a heavy price. And I think this time things can spiral so far out of control that we are in really, really deep trouble. Not just of a nuclear conflict, but look at the impact this has had on our economy already, on everything. If China gets involved and shipments of anything from China are disrupted, we're in big trouble. It'll take a long time to ramp up factories here again and get production rolling, because national security isn't just about weapons. It's about a strong economy. It's about having, steel and energy and manufacturing. That's what got us through World War II. That's why we were victorious, why we held on as long as we did before the nukes were detonated. It's because the United States and Canada it was, the height of the Industrial Revolution, really. We had all this manufacturing in place. We were able to manufacture everything we needed, including the weapons.
Yeah, that's what made us the powerhouse in both World War I and II. And, my biggest fear out of this right now is I believe these conflicts right now and the rhetoric coming out of our government officials is going to improve their polling numbers ultimately, and that people like what they're doing. I have queued up a propaganda piece by Justin Trudeau from his trip abroad. I haven't seen this
good.
yet, but
This will be a treat.
so get strapped in and here we go.
On my way back from Europe now, where I met with close to a dozen world leaders who are absolutely focused, like we are, on standing with Ukraine and pushing back against Russian aggression. The sanctions we continue to ratchet up are having a crippling effect on the Russian economy and more on Putin and his closest supporters who've enabled this illegal, terrible war. I also visited our NATO troops in Latvia, where Canadians are holding strong as a deterrent to further Russian aggression, and we've extended that mission for another few years. I got to go to Poland as well, where I met with so many people who are supporting people fleeing Ukraine, and quite frankly, there for the Ukrainians I met who have left behind everything in the world and many of their loved ones as they fight heroically against this Russian invasion. We will continue to be there with weapons, with humanitarian support, with everything we can do to help Ukraine and stand up for democracy around the world.
What was he saying? I couldn't make out half of it because he had a mask on.
Yeah, that's my first thought with that, is that, I mean, he knows he's going to be making these comments on video and he's wearing a mask? What? What?
Why did he have to wear a mask when he made the video? Why couldn't he do it someplace where he felt safe enough to take the mask off?
Well, and he certainly felt safe enough walking into that building with hand in hand with Boris Johnson, with no mask on. Neither of them were masked. It was on film, like in the same film where he's in a plane wearing a mask.
Did you notice that they didn't include the protesters outside the building, that he had to walk around to the back to go in with Boris?
Yep.
He had to sneak in the back door.
And those protesters were saying FJT.
Wow. So,
yes. See,
I don't know
there's going to be liberals that watch that, and they're going to be like, oh wow, look, our prime minister sure is stepping up in this time of crisis. I'm so proud of everything Canada is doing for Ukraine.
Julie Waters says your boy King is annoying. Yes, he most certainly is.
Yep.
He's worse than annoying. I think he's dangerous, and I think he's full of hate.
He's
and
deplorable.
He divides people. He smears people, dehumanizes people, attacks people, imprisons people who he sees as political opponents. He is a tyrant. He's a tyrant. And he sent lethal aid and money to actual Nazis in Ukraine. Real Nazis. Not the fake kind that he makes up. The real guys. The real Nazis. Not to say that they're all Nazis over there. I'm not saying that, but there are Nazi groups, and they gave them weapons and trained them. They trained the Azov group, NATO.
That's correct. And you know what's funny is we still haven't heard any word out of any politician's mouth about that. None whatsoever. None of them have even mentioned it. It's like when Chrystia Freeland, our Deputy Prime Minister of Canada, was caught holding a Banderite banner. Try saying that 3 times fast. There was no mention of it from her staff or anything else like that. It was just, they just took it down. And then all of the virtue signaling media personalities jump in on the national post and say, "Oh, anybody who criticizes there being Nazis in Ukraine is falling for KGB disinformation tactics."
Do you think that trip did him any good? I think it was. I think it was designed in part because he is suffering so much in the polls, and his public image has taken such a hit, both at home and internationally, after the crap that he pulled with the truckers and the way he treated people, sending in his goon squad
Mm-hmm.
to bust skulls and shoot people with rubber bullets, and sending in the LRAD machine, the long range acoustic device, to blow people's eardrums out.
That's exactly why he did this. Don't be fooled. That's exactly why he did this. And the worst part is it'll probably work to some degree.
Yeah.
Not by us, but I mean by many people. They'll be like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so proud of our prime minister here in Canada. He cares about the people of Ukraine." Can't get enough of it.
Elite says NATO training Nazis, W2F Rick. It's true. They have, I don't know if, I don't really know, can't quite gauge the tone of that, but I don't know if Elite 333 is questioning whether it's true or just upset that it's happening, but it is a true thing. NATO has engaged in training the Ukrainian military, and the first units to come up for training were made up of these Nazi groups, Azov being one of the primary ones,
Mm-hmm.
and NATO trained them. These are real Nazi groups with real political power in Ukraine, and they've received NATO training. They've engaged in NATO training exercises. NATO troops have actually been on Ukrainian soil. That's why Putin is so concerned. That's why he's so upset, because not only have they has Ukraine asked to become a member of NATO, NATO has been in there.
Mm-hmm.
And they've even allowed Ukrainian troops to leave and participate in NATO training exercises. So even though they're not officially part of NATO, they've become more and more westernized as a country, and their military is becoming more and more integrated with NATO forces. This is a big problem for the Russians because they see it as a threat. And yes, we have trained them, and now we're arming them. Canada sent over $400 million worth of money, funding, plus lethal aid, as Justin Trudeau put it, lethal weapons, and night vision goggles, and I believe hand grenades, guns, some of which went to these Nazi groups, some of which actually has now ended up in the hands of organized crime over there, gangs who have been running around in cities shooting people, shooting each other, gang warfare going on with weapons that has been provided by the West. That in itself is not just irresponsible, it seems almost evil to me. It is evil.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if it makes everybody feel any better, all the Twitter comments with that video are just like, you're a monster. Which is great. But I mean, there's also stuff like this that's on there. And this is concerning. It goes to show you how far the propaganda works.
Bus says, what do you mean why they are? There are neo-Nazi groups in Ukraine. It's a known fact. It's true.
Yep.
It's absolutely, it's a true thing. And yet our government seems to they're just not even acknowledging it. They don't want to talk about it. It's too uncomfortable for them, but we should be holding them accountable. These are real Nazi groups with ties that go all the way back to World War II and support for the Hitler Nazis.
Yeah.
It goes back that far. And these groups still exist today in a current form. And they are integrated into the government and the Ukrainian military. And they still fly their Nazi banners. And they exert a lot of influence. They don't make up a majority. They're still a minority within the country. But Ukraine is a country that is deeply divided along ideological grounds, including these Nazi groups, and also cultural grounds, because you have on the one side Ukrainian-speaking people, and on the other side Russian-speaking people. That's something else the media doesn't really acknowledge, is that you sort of have about half the country that is basically Russian, and the other side that is Ukrainian. And this is one of the reasons you have all this conflict and turmoil within the country itself. That's part of what makes it so complicated. It's about culture, it's about history, it's about all of these issues that honestly people in Canada and the United States don't really have the background information on, the education, because why would they pay that close attention unless you have relatives there or you have links back to the country? But the majority of people just are not aware. So they're forming their opinions based entirely off the information they're receiving through media. And most of the people get it through the legacy media, not from places like this. I mean, we're reaching thousands and thousands of people every night now. But not enough, because it's the legacy media that still seems to have the upper hand. I guess that's as good a time as any for us to ask for your help. And you can do that by donating at freedomreporters.com or clicking the link to the donation page directly in the YouTube and Facebook descriptions. And soon we'll be back on Rumble once we get all the technical difficulties ironed out there. And if for any reason we're banned off YouTube, please check us out over on Rumble. We'll be there for sure on Rumble. We won't be going away if we get kicked off here. And the same with Facebook. We will be over there. And we'll be on other video platforms as well. I expect we'll be on Odyssey at some point. And I wish BitChute was equipped to handle live streams, because I'm sure we would do well over there as well. Mm-hmm. But for sure on Rumble. And so if we disappear, we're not gone. We've just been forced to move. And you can support us. We do need your help. You can donate at freedomreporters.com, because we are not just going to stick around. We're going to expand. And to do that, it's just going to take a little bit of funding, because even to be on Rumble, there are expenses involved in being on over there. So that's just one of the reasons we need your support. And for those who have donated, thank you. Greatly, greatly appreciated.
Absolutely. And if you are unable to support us with your donation, please feel free to give this video a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button and the bell for notifications. It does help us out a lot, and we cannot say how thankful we are that everybody has tuned in with us and enjoys our content, and it's absolutely amazing. So thank you so much for all your help, and for helping us get these conversations out to you guys, because we feel that is the number one way to combat all the craziness in the world. Is we need to have these conversations, and we need to continually be in the search for truth.
Just trying to get you closer to the truth, whatever truth is. And we can do that through dialogue and open discussion and exploring stories that other media outlets just aren't able to, or just unwilling to, or just ignore. So that's why we're here. That's why we're here. And in fact, we've seen just in the past week, legacy media outlets like the CBC deleting stories because they either made stuff up or got it wrong. So the CBC did delete a story, apparently, falsely claiming that foreign money was behind the Freedom Convoy in Ottawa. And that is the case, that the people who run Give, Send, Go did reveal information that showed that these claims of foreign money funding the Freedom Convoy were false. And we'd seen other information also stating the exact same thing. So, and we know we illustrated for you that the CBC was just outright lying about everything going on in Ottawa. They were fabricating these things, trying to smear the truckers as a bunch of white supremacist domestic terrorists. Absolutely ridiculous. So the information is that the Freedom Convoy raised more than $10 million on the site, the Give, Send, Go site, before the campaign was suspended for violating the company's terms of service. Approximately 1.2 million came from outside Canada, or I guess that was Go Send. Go Send? No, they were up like 10 million, right?
Give, Send, Go. I can't remember what total they got for it, but I do recall.
So this, yes, I'm sorry. So this guy Benitez said that the GoFundMe campaign did not identify any donators affiliated with terrorist groups or organized crime activities. He said, we do extensive analysis on the activities that are happening on our platform. In fact, it is our goal to be the most trusted platform in social fundraising, he said. He goes on, if we were aware that something like that was occurring, those folks are not welcome to participate on our platform. Those activities would have been prohibited, and we would have filtered that out. But did say that they were monitoring the campaign just because there was so much support and so much money that was flowing into it. And I think they ended up raising, just on GoFundMe, something like $10 million, if I'm not mistaken, right?
That's correct, $10 million with GoFundMe. I'm unsure the total that was obtained through Give, Send, Go.
And then CBC Radio's The World This Hour incorrectly said GoFundMe ended a fundraiser for the protesters over questionable donations to the group. So that was another story that they took down. And then an anchor on CBC's Power and Politics suggested that Russia had played a role in planning and orchestrating the Truckers for Freedom convoy. There was never any evidence of the sort. And I'm quite certain that's just simply not true. That is another complete CBC fabrication. How can we trust anything those guys say over there anymore? Anything. It's ridiculous. Here's another story from the Daily Mail that says Canada's state broadcaster, the CBC, spreads a bizarre conspiracy theory that Russian actors are behind 50,000 strong freedom convoy of truckers protesting Justin Trudeau's vaccine mandate. Police threatened to arrest truckers blockading the U.S. border in Alberta. That's an older story. That was from back in February.
Yeah, in fact, the picture of the presenter there, I can't remember what her name is, but she was on Power and Politics, and she said it like right out of nowhere. It was just like, yeah, this could be the Russians, and the government official said, well, I can't talk to you about that, but you could talk to so and so about that, and it's just ridiculous. You know it's ridiculous, and now they're squirming. And you know what? How dare the state broadcaster that our tax-paying dollars pay for just about everything that they get? How dare they delete stories that they made? I would rather keep them up and just redact them or put a note on it or something.
Well, I would think that there must be some. If I were a trucker and I suffered my reputation suffered in some way, or I've suffered financially because of what they had done, I would think that some of these guys might consider legal action against the CBC for saying these things.
They'd be totally within their right to.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, look what happened with Kyle Rittenhouse south of the border in Kenosha, Wisconsin, where he was accused of being a white supremacist mass murderer, but meanwhile he chose to enact his American constitutional right to carry a firearm, and ultimately he had, I think he killed 2 people and shot a third, and it was unanimous in the jury that Kyle Rittenhouse was doing self-defense ultimately, and so he was not charged for any of it. And now he is going after all these celebrities and even news organizations, etc., that have slandered him in the media. And that's the big problem with North America, is that something happens and the media just immediately jumps all over it and makes all these assumptions. That's the second time that something like this has happened, because there's that kid who is in Washington, D.C. wearing a Make America Great Again hat, and CNN played it off that he was being confrontational with a First Nations man, and that absolute slander and spin of a story. So I think that it's very plausible that some people may go the same route.
Yeah, it's inevitable. The media keeps doing, repeating the same process over and over again. They see a story like that erupt, and it's a fabrication, but they jump on the bandwagon, and it's just the what's in the current news cycle, and they just go with it, right? But in this new age of social media, I think that it's inevitable that you're going to see more and more litigation surrounding this kind of smearing.
Yeah, and I mean, Kyle Rittenhouse, he's probably going to successfully sue the pants off of several of these people, and most interestingly, I think that he very well possibly could sue President Joe Biden. If not President Joe Biden, he could sue their campaign.
So, time to just check in on the Freedom or the Peoples Convoy, which is, it seems like they're kind of in a holding pattern, if you will. They're going through the motions, sort of holding the line, still staging at the Hagerstown Speedway, and just have to wonder how much longer this is going to go on before they get some, the attention of more politicians, or how's this going to play out? I know that some of those truckers are a little bit antsy, right? They want some progress. They've been there about a week now, right?
Yeah, they've been there about a week. And interestingly enough, we had tuned into the President Donald Trump speech yesterday, and he made no mention of them. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, he gave remarks of appraisal to the Canadian truckers, but this is, you just, like, how effective is this if Donald Trump didn't make any mention of it? Or is he steering clear of it because he doesn't want to end up with another January 6th like moment where they're going to accuse him of inciting something?
Yeah. See, the thing is, Brendan, I take my hat off to anybody that goes out right now to protest. You went to a protest yesterday. and saw what was going on. I get it, but I don't think it's making any difference other than it brings people together who sort of have a common goal and a common view,
Yeah.
and that. But other than that, I don't think the government cares. I don't think those things are doing anything. I have to be quite honest. I'm frustrated with what's going on in our world. Um, I think that what went on in Ottawa and at the border crossings, that got the attention of the government. And I think that we did see the needle move because of what was happening there. There was a lot of attention paid to that. And because of that, we saw a lot of things happen. Aaron O'Toole removed as leader from the Conservative Party. We've seen provinces move to begin to remove mandates, mask mandates coming off, right? Vaccine
Yeah.
passports being pulled back in provinces, in some provinces in Canada now, right? Now, some of that is smoke and mirrors, no question about it, because they're still proceeding with digital IDs and those systems. And I think that medical information like these, like COVID vaccinations, are going to be probably integrated into those systems. But we did see some movement backwards on some of these initiatives. I think it was pretty clear that that was because of the truckers. Now, yeah, the truckers ultimately the protest in Ottawa was busted up by the cops. So it started out as this very Canadian outpouring of national pride with massive public support, has turned into this weird reverse negative propaganda campaign and war on the truckers using a variety of weapons, including lawfare. But I think that what happened there was effective. What's going on now in Canada has been this the government will tolerate this. People walking around with some Bristol board signs every once in a while, and then they come out on the weekend, they wave their signs, and then they go home. And they'll just put up with it, but I don't think it makes much of a difference, honestly. There's just no leverage there. I think they just get ignored. That's the thing. Go ahead, go ahead, walk around over there. We're going to ignore you. So I just wonder, like we got some attention with these truckers at the People's Convoy initially as they were rolling across the country. There was some coverage. We've known about that. We saw Ted Cruz and Ron Johnson meet with them this past week. But again, it's like, where's the leverage? How do they make sure that these politicians take note? And I know they're driving around the Beltway. They're making their presence known. The politicians know it's something of a threat, I guess, because they have the numbers. But and they could potentially do something else, whatever that might be, that the government might not like as much. But here we are tonight looking at the live feeds, and now it's just Sunday, right? So
Yeah,
I'm hoping that what they do is productive. I hope that the guys in charge, and they seem to sort of have a good plan in a way, because they did get a meeting. But I share frustration because I see what's going on in Canada, where the efforts ongoing right now just seem to be going up into the ether. It's like gone. It's like, okay, we're out there protesting on Saturday, and then nothing. It just doesn't have teeth. It's like having a strike, right? And showing up once a week when the factory is closed to march with a picket sign, and then everybody goes home, and maybe some people show up again the next weekend. It just doesn't have an impact on the factory. And so, like Monday through Friday, maybe Monday through Saturday, they bring in replacement workers, and then on Sundays when the place is shut down, they show up to set up a picket line when it doesn't matter. That's just kind of the way it feels to me. So What do you think?
That is kind of how it feels to me too, and I am really concerned that this is all going to go into obscurity, and the people of North America and the West, information travels so quick now that we suffer through what I would call a short news cycle syndrome, where just like how easily Ukraine took over coronavirus news, that happens all the time. That things are hyped and over exaggerated to oblivion, and the next thing comes on, and then everybody just forgets about the old thing and moves on to the next thing. But I truly believe that enough people have been severely harmed by government overreach in the past 2 years that I have a hard time letting that go, and I'll be the first to admit that, I would say. But that's just it. We need the truth to come out because we can't have them doing this anymore. The West adopted Chinese authoritarian style lockdowns to handle a virus to which we already had our own measures in place and how to handle these things. The whole thing smells. It's terrible.
There was just a comment that I saw come up on the screen there talking about U.S. planes heading to Iran. And I just want to point out that we don't have any information on that. So I'm just cautioning everyone that even though that was a comment that was on there, until we are able to confirm any information, I wouldn't take that as truth because we just don't know what's going on, if there's any truth to it at all. But it's certainly something we will check out. So I just don't know, Brendan. I'm not sure what to do. I don't know what I share the frustration of the truckers, including the organizers of the Peoples Convoy, because you don't want to give anyone opposing, these anti-freedom groups any ammunition, any reason to have the cops or to come in there and shut anything down. You don't want people arrested. You don't want violence. You don't want any of that. You don't want a repeat of what we saw at the end of the Ottawa demonstrations, right?
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, what do you use for leverage when you're bargaining and you want something? You need to have something to bargain with.
Yeah, it's true. Otherwise, what do we have?
Otherwise, you're just you're sitting there, and what do you have that the other side wants? What do you have that you're holding over the other side that makes them want to come to the table to negotiate with you or to talk to you even? What do you have? For Ted Cruz, I think what the People's Convoy has is support, votes, optics, photo op. That's what was there for him. And maybe, I think maybe even Ted Cruz shares the values and the concerns. And I think he does care about freedom. But that's a guy who's kind of on their side. How do you bring the people who are not on your side to the table to talk to you? That's a guy who's like there to support you, right?
Yeah. And we did have a Mr. Schmidt on. He was part of the People's Convoy, and that was one of the thoughts I had at the very time is has there been any Democrats out that come to talk to you? He said no, and I don't suspect that they will.
Josh Brewersma says, give you strength and good feeling, Rick. Then you stand not alone screaming in the desert. I understand, Brendan. Elite 333, protests increase local morale, but you're quite right, Rick. It doesn't affect change unless you blockade. Yeah, and I'm sorry to say that, but yeah, um, you can't have a strike at a factory and not pick it outside, because if you don't pick it and block access, you have no leverage.
Mm-hmm.
They'll just bring in replacement workers. Same idea, right? Same thing. And it's the same thing, Brendan. Like I know that a bunch of people were. So you were in Sarnia yesterday, Sarnia, Ontario, right?
Yeah.
So a bunch of people go down to Sarnia City Hall again, walk around with some Bristol board signs. Maybe it makes them feel good, but I don't think Justin Trudeau is paying any attention. I don't think Doug Ford, the Premier of Ontario, is paying any attention. I don't think they care. I doubt that the mayor of Sarnia even cares what you guys did yesterday. You've been down there how many weekends in a row? That's why after over 2 years of these protests, I see them happening in all these towns. And I think the politicians are kind of like, yeah, okay, well, let those crazy people go do what they want. The little people, we don't care. And I mean, they've been so totalitarian that during the height of the pandemic, when the lockdowns were at their height, they were handing out tickets to people protesting, right? Even the small protests. But ultimately, this stuff I don't think they care about.
No. It's very apparent they're just trying to ignore it into obscurity. Yeah, you're very right about the morale part, but
because it's the equivalent of paying it's like some pizza place having some kids stand out of the street holding a sign saying, 2-for-1 pizza. It's advertising. Okay. Yeah. And it's the same with the convoy. Like we've seen these little mini convoys in a lot of towns. It's happening here in my hometown. Every once in a while, they'll go out and have a little mini convoy where they drive around. That's advertising. That raises awareness, but it doesn't apply any leverage. You've got nothing to bargain with there. You're just trying to convince people to think your way by displaying signage and it's like an advertising campaign. It's just, that's all it is. Emilios Man says, exactly, these protests have to produce discomfort to do something so for all mild noise of a nothing burger. I'm sorry, but yeah, you got to have something. And I'm not telling anybody what to do. I don't necessarily have a solution. They've kind of got the whole movement back, into a place of almost impotence because you're afraid to blockade anything because you know what they're going to do. You can't take any aggressive action at all because you know what they're going to do. They're going to come in, lock people up, charge you with domestic terrorism, do all these terrible things. In Canada, they'll freeze your bank account. They'll do all kinds of terrible things to you.
And permanently mark them, we need to say as well, because that is the biggest tragedy, the biggest tragedy out of all of this, that however many people's bank accounts they froze in a computer system somewhere, they're all labeled as terrorists, essentially. Right.
Yeah, Mary says they don't need permission from us for the way they run their convoy. That's true. And I don't mean this. I'm not criticizing them. I salute them. I take my hat off to them. And I totally get where the organizers are coming from on this. And I'm impressed that they got that meeting with Ted Cruz and Ron Johnson last week. And I'm gonna give them the benefit of the doubt here, and say that I think maybe they have a larger plan and backup plans in place. And I think they have the support of all the guys down there and all the women and the families, and all the people who have just shown up in their cars to lend their support as well. But I'm just saying this is a really frustrating thing. It's a very difficult thing to deal with right now because these are not normal times. This is a completely new scenario. And I don't know how you get the leverage, because if you try to get the leverage, they're going to crack down on you. So in that way, they're really stifling free speech, freedom of expression, the right to protest. They're they've taken it away from people, because there's always in both countries been a long tradition of protests being somewhat disruptive, and that being to a degree acceptable, whether it's the civil rights movements or blocking off streets where you have a massive million-man march, right? Because you have to block off the entire street to do that, or holding, or as I say, and there's precedents set through labor disputes where workers block access to factories or places of employment in order to exert their leverage by withholding, not just withholding their labor, but preventing other labor from coming in. Well, that's why the government took note of the blockades at the bridge in Windsor, and Detroit, the blockade in Coutts, right, Alberta, and the protest in Ottawa, which was, according to the one judge, completely lawful. It was a lawful protest, but the government just kept saying it was unlawful. They said it was unlawful. Therefore, they just made it up. They just said, okay, this particular protest is unlawful.
Repeat.
Yeah.
Repeat it until they believe you.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm not criticizing. Don't mean it that way at all. I'm just saying this is really, really difficult to navigate, and I'm worried about it insofar as all this effort, all this time, all this money. We've even seen truckers, cash in their 401ks so that they can go down there and be part of this whole thing. And I hope that there's a productive payoff at the end, that I hope it works, because a lot of people are putting a lot on the line and they're determined to stay there for the long haul, but it's got to produce results.
Absolutely. And we all have a burning desire to be left alone entirely by our government at this point. Like,
They would say better to have signs that say fire Trudeau instead of that other F word. Well, I mean, that's the thing too. They've watered stuff down so much. It was okay to have an F Trump flag or sign, but if you have an F Trudeau flag, that's hate speech.
yeah, that's more double standards, rules for the left, but not for the right.
Well, that's the world we're living in right now, and I think it's a problem. Big problem. Protests can't be forbidden. It's your human and civil right. Well, that's what I thought too, until they enacted the Emergencies Act and until they implemented the emergencies measures in provinces, which then they said, they used the notwithstanding clause in the Charter of Rights and Freedoms to say that those rights no longer applied. Therefore, you weren't allowed to protest because of COVID outside. So they were handing out fines as high as $100,000 for protesting on a street corner.
Yeah.
So no, man, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Our country, Canada, is gone because all of our rights are gone. And even though they say, well, your rights are reinstated right now, the reality is we don't have any rights because they can take them away like that at the drop of a hat with the stroke of a pen. We hereby deem all rights to be taken away because of this Emergencies Act or this emergency measure, this healthcare mandate. Therefore, you have to do this. It doesn't matter what the charter says. That means you don't have any rights anymore.
Absolutely. It's very clear that the government is working and has been working for a long time that their main policy is it's better to mess around and ask for forgiveness than it is to seek permission. And that seems very evident with everything that we've been through and with things that have happened in the past.
Yeah. So yeah, we're just the country is just screwed. What other comments do we have coming in? Trudeau won't allow free speech because he knows he's a dictator. That's right. That's exactly right. John Murnick says he threw his copy of the charter in the trash. Yeah, it's a failed document. It apparently wasn't worth the paper it was written on. What was the point? What the heck was the point? How can you have rights if they can just be taken away anytime the government wants to take them away? Then they're not rights at all. It's pointless. We have none. It's an illusion. I guess it always was. I thought we had rights. I was wrong. And the government figured that out. And now we don't have a country. Not a free one. Canada, as we've known it, is gone. Canada is gone, not worth thinking about, Ann Hirsch says. Maybe. I don't know. I wish we could get it back, but I think we're going to have to fight for it. And, you know, it's so, again, today, where did I go? I was at a Home Depot today because I had to buy plumbing parts. It was the third place I went to get parts. I started at the small hometown hardware store first, of course. But I was in there. And what did I hear on the PA system? It was an announcement saying that, I can't remember the exact phrasing, but they said that now their employees have the option to display their gender pronouns on their aprons. And I was like, well, okay, first of all, I don't really care. If people want to do that, they should be free to do whatever they want, I guess, because I believe in freedom. But what bothered me was it was like, why does Home Depot feel that they need to put that on the PA system? It's virtue signaling at the corporate level. And it shows that Home Depot as a corporation has been captured by the far radical left. They've bent the knee. I find it concerning.
Oddly enough, to cater to whom, right? Like, most people going to Home Depot are usually not like these leftist types. It's usually like contractors and that sort of thing. I highly doubt that most people who go to Home Depot care about pronouns at all.
Yeah, it just, I was like, it was jarring to me, right? When that announcement came on. And I thought, that is just weird.
And look, this whole pronoun issue is very deep in the fact that, like, in many ways, it's compelled speech. That in this person's presence or without them in your presence, how you refer to them is chargeable under human rights courts in Canada, which is a kangaroo court system.
Well, I made sure I looked at that time. I looked at the apron of the cashier that was serving me, and I just saw that she just had her name written on hers. There was no pronoun. It was just her name. And okay, well, whatever. But again, I don't, if you want to write whatever you want on your apron, I really don't care. Have at it. I'm not going to go ahead. Do what you want.
Yeah.
Right. But for Home Depot to make a big deal out of it,
mm-hmm.
It's entirely political. And I'm interested in buying plumbing parts. I don't really want to be subjected to a political message while I'm doing it. I'd like to leave the politics out of my plumbing. I just wanted to go get some ABS pipe. That was it. Okay. But I was just subjected to the pronoun issue. At Home Depot.
Oddly enough, I've seen Home Depots that have rainbow crosswalks, of all places. But I mean,
And again, I mean, like, so what? Like, go ahead. You have your rainbow, whatever. It's all fine with me. It's all fine with me. It's just, I see it with all these corporations. It's all in all the advertising, whether it's a car company or an oil company. I mean, I see climate change ads coming from oil companies. I see car companies with all these politically correct programs and grants, and it's just rampant through every institution. And now it's on the PA, and it's on the PA system.
yeah.
Well, Canadian Tire's another one. They're another company that is completely woke. You get it on the screens when you go in there with their messaging. You get it on their PA system as well. Rosanna Enns Cron says, I've been saying that for a long time. We're going to have to fight for our free Canada, trying to wake people up, but they refused to wake up. I think now finally some are starting to wake up, kind of late. Yeah, just a little.
Oh God, 5,000. Look, the thing you got to take away from this stuff, people, is Canadian Tire, Home Depot, Bud Light don't give a crap about what's between your legs. They don't give a crap about you. So they could virtue stand for whatever political message or ideology they want to, but at the end of their day, their sole objective in this world is just to get you to buy more crap. And if you think it gives you some kind of warm and fuzzy feeling about whatever political issue or agenda that they're pushing, give your head a shake, because that's not the case at all. And in fact, I think people should be offended that are a part of these communities, or that feel that way, that these corporations that make millions of dollars, in some cases billions of dollars, take their social political issue and they end up looking stupid, quite frankly, that they're being manipulated and used by these corporations. It's absolutely horrendous.
Well, one of the main reasons all these companies are doing this is because they get government grants, or they get protection from the government in the form of regulations.
And their ESG score, their economic social governance score, which
Right.
any publicly traded corporation has this ESG score. And the better your score is, the more likely you're able to get investments. And they'll put your company first in order to receive investments in the list of things.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we are already screwed on a social credit system, because they've already inserted it into the corporate level. And this is something for another episode, but there's articles that are pushing people to determine what their personal ESG score is. But it's like I said, at the end of the day, these corporations don't give a crap about you or anybody. All they want is more money. And that's fine. I'm okay with open market capitalism. Good. That's fine. But at least be honest about what you're doing and what you want, because what they're doing is not honest, and it's absurd.
There's a Charlie Kirk video that was just sent in here, and I think maybe just briefly we can take a quick look at this and then maybe comment on it. Is that okay, Brendan, if we do that?
Rock and roll.
Okay, let me just pull this up here. Okay, let's just listen to this and we'll see where this takes us.
Charlie, where do we begin? We're talking about the Great Reset.
Yeah, I mean, first, it's an intimidating topic for a lot of people. And I have done a lot of research and study into this for the last year, year and a half in particular. And it's intimidating because when you just read the website of the people that are trying to execute the Great Reset, you feel like you're reading a conspiracy theory. And I think that's actually part of the strategy, is that they lead with the stuff that you won't even believe. And then they're able to say, like, oh, it's not even a conspiracy theory because there's no way that it could actually be real. And this is affecting all of our lives in more ways than one. And, Jack, you and I were texting back and forth, I think, right near our Turning Point USA America Fest, right near Christmas. And I said, Jack, I really want to do something special when I come back, to your amazing church. And you had the idea to talk about the Great Reset and to dive into it because it can be really complex, but it doesn't have to be. And the way I want to start, though, Jack, is to kind of frame the players that are behind this. So we've all heard the term globalist. These are people that do not believe in the sovereignty of nations. These are people that don't believe in borders. They don't believe there should be any difference between America or Brazil or Sierra Leone, that the world needs to come together in a borderless society. Jack, you're going to go into depth of how the scriptures actually, prophesy this in amazing detail. So the globalists, they look at themselves as trying to microengineer your behavior, the world, your decisions, and in particular, let's just be blunt, they want to play God because they don't believe in God.
Hang on one moment.
Believes in two things. And you might have different politics, you might have different ways of looking at the world. We believe there is a God and you are not him. Is that right? We believe those two things tonight?
Good start.
That's a nice starting point, right?
Absolutely.
At the World Economic Forum, the globalist setting, they believe neither of them. That's right. They do not believe there is a God, and they believe if there was a God, it's me, titan of industry, Jeff Bezos, Hollywood actor, head of state. So that's a huge difference, right? So we start from a philosophical approach of one of humility and one that is waiting for God's grace to come down to us. They look at one as one of will. I am going to make the world as I want it, and I am going to be in charge. And that really is a satanic and good versus evil struggle that we see from the very beginning of the Bible. So this convenes actually in a place. So every winter, the richest people on the planet, state actors, they meet in Switzerland in a town called Davos. Probably heard of this before. Usually they'll do kind of market commentary from Davos, Switzerland, right near the border of Liechtenstein. Really nice, beautiful area if you guys ever visit it. Less important about where it is, but more important what actually happens there. For the last couple of years, they've really become more and more organized, and they've become more vocal and more clear about the world that they are trying to usher in. And they were kind of always struggling and wrestling. You go back to look at the tapes of 2017, 2018, 2019, before the Chinese coronavirus, they were unable to make the argument of the bridge. So they knew where we were, and they knew where they wanted to go, but they were always stopping short of how to get there. Because they're like, Western society is super rich and prosperous and has private property rights and has borders. How are we actually going to connect the two of them? So the man who is the chairman of the World Economic Forum is an individual by the name of Klaus Schwab. So if you are like in central casting of a Hollywood film, Bond villain, this is Klaus Schwab. Let's put a picture of Klaus Schwab up on the screen, by the way. You ever seen the recent James Bond film of Blofeld? That's Klaus Schwab, right? No, it gets better. So he's also talks in this like super baritone German accent. And I think we have a video of Klaus Schwab really quick, just to get an idea of kind of who you're dealing with here really quick.
When I mention our names like Mrs. Merkel, even Vladimir Putin and so on, they all have been young global leaders of the World Economic Forum. Mm-hmm. But what we are very proud of now is the young generation, like Prime Minister Trudeau, President of Argentina and so on, that we penetrate the cabinets. So yesterday I was at a reception for Prime Minister Trudeau, and I know that half of this cabinet, or even more, half of this cabinet, are actually young global leaders of the world economic forum.
And that's true in Argentina too.
Jeez, what is that noise?
I don't know. That's true in Argentina as well.
It's true in Argentina, and it's true in France now. I mean, with the president, with young global leaders.
Okay, you guys.
So,
that's
but
good.
let me translate. I know it's like this understated thing. What he's saying there, he's openly admitting. I know it could be hard to understand the English German accent. He's openly admitting the World Economic Forum has taken over entire governments.
So what do you think, Brendan?
Well, I've seen that clip before, and I am well familiar with it. And it is interesting how they keep pointing out that Klaus Schwab is a typical kind of Bond bad guy. And, I mean, he does definitely give that vibe, very creepy. It's a big problem that this many of our politicians are going to these things, and they're setting all these meetings and having all these conversations with us, and then we're seeing it pop up. Like, it's not by accident that we have Build Back Better happening in England, France, Canada, and the United States. And that's my number one reason why I don't take any of these politicians and leaders trying to downplay the effect of the World Economic Forum, because they're pissing on our backs and telling us it's raining, essentially. Oh, they don't have any power. They have nothing to do with how we work things. But, oh yeah, by the way, we're going to do Build Back Better. It's going to be great. The pandemic is an opportunity for a reset. Like, there's motives to it. And I think that's the proof is in the pudding. Otherwise, if it wasn't true, we wouldn't hear things like that from our political leaders.
Who Apophis, if I'm pronouncing that right, German's third attempt at world control, it will fail. And I understand what's being said there, and I would echo that and say that what we're witnessing is fascism. The WEF is fascist in nature. It's socialist. But it's the type of socialism that we saw more in line with the fascist socialism of Nazi Germany, applied on a global scale. That is the WEF. And that is the WEF of our Prime Minister in Canada, Justin Trudeau, and the Deputy Prime Minister, Chrystia Freeland. And that's what I was alluding to the other night when I was referring to this sort of hybrid fascistic communist ideology and system that they're trying to impose on a global scale. And that's what we refer to, I think, today as globalism or globalists. This is the new form of fascism. It's a hybrid of socialism, communism, and fascism. And I think that who Apophis is correct in saying that. And it's a very scary thing. And that's why it's all about government control. It's all about building back better. It's about coordinating things globally. It's about taking over the world. It's about eugenics. And even this phrase that some people are beginning to wake up to, transhumanism, which is to say that they want to integrate humans with a digital reality. Combine human beings with a cybernetic digital consciousness. These people think immortality can be achieved that way. They want to put us all in the matrix. And that's not a conspiracy theory. It's a real thing. Elon Musk has even been running tests to connect the human mind to computers digitally. Those experiments are going on right now.
Yep. Elon Musk and his Neuralink project. It's the first thing that comes to my mind.
That's exactly right. And Klaus Schwab, World Economic Forum, what's that guy's name? Yuval Noah Harari has spoken about this. He's like an underling to Klaus Schwab. There are videos of him talking about this, and we should get into all this transhumanism and the issues surrounding transhumanism in a future episode. I think Brendan is, maybe even next Sunday or something, because these Sundays seem to be a good day to explore issues more in depth rather than just hit the breaking news stories. But
yeah, that's a good plan.
These are all. It's a deep topic, and it raises all kinds of ethical questions, technological questions, biological questions, social questions, and it's a real thing. And this is part of what they're pushing for when these politicians and world leaders meet in Davos each year. This is one of the things that they discuss: transhumanism. And
that sounds like an excellent plan.
And the Great Reset, I think, is all part of that. It's one step toward that. Yeah, Relic says, yes, Harari is an absolute nutter. Yeah. When I listen to these people talk about transhumanism and creating sort of a digital reality for people, all I can think of is all the electronic devices that I've had over my lifetime that are now obsolete and thrown into the recycling bin. If we turn human beings into digital creatures, how long will it be before we're obsolete?
Yeah.
And thrown into the dustbin to be recycled? You're only as good as the next technological upgrade. Human being 2.0, human being 3.0. I got jacked in when I was 16, but now I'm 50, and the 16-year-olds are way more advanced. I'm not the T1000. I'm model T100, so I'm obsolete.
It gives me horrific images in my mind. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Doctor Who, but in Doctor Who, there's this alien species called the Cybermen, and they go around abducting humans and saying, you will receive your free compulsory upgrade. That's exactly what it reminds me of. And even when it comes to the shot, the sniffle shot, that's exactly what it felt like in that regard too. You need to come for your third free compulsory upgrade. That's what you need. And then it's just the way that phrase is worded. I don't see any difference between how that phrase is worded and how a lot of the propaganda has been worded at us. And they always throw little words in there like, oh, it's free. That's right. Whenever somebody says something's free to me, I'm like warning bells all over. It's like, yeah, nothing in life is free, man.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
Well,
We will be, exploring these issues in more depth. And this coming week, we have some original stories to share with you. I know Tuesday night, and again, we're kind of, I think we need to not really reveal who the guest Tuesday is yet still. And I'll explain sort of later why. But a mystery guest coming on Tuesday. You're definitely going to want to be here Tuesday night, 6 p.m.
Eastern Standard Time.
Yeah, Eastern Standard Time. It's an important story. It really is. And we just can't tell you what it is right now because there's just too much heat around it. So just trust us. Be here Tuesday for sure. I'm not sure what we got going on tomorrow night. I've got some feelers out. I'm hoping to line up a good guest for tomorrow night. But there's going to be a lot to discuss. We will follow up on what, the fallout, if you will, from the missile strikes in Iraq, because it looks like there might be some escalation as a result of that. If there is, we will certainly report on that. We'll follow up with these truckers involved with the Peoples Convoy. We still have Pfizer documents to go over, but we got to get that Rumble channel up and running properly in order to deal with that. And we're going to put together some guests to deal with that. And we have somebody from the New Blue Party lined up in the next week as well, which is a provincial party in Ontario. And and they'll be coming in to talk about the New Blue, what they stand for, and what we can expect to see in the upcoming Ontario provincial election.
Yep.
That'll be part of an important show. There'll be other topics that night as well that we'll explore, but that'll be an interesting night as well, I think.
I believe so too, because this election coming up in Ontario is going to be something special. I think it's going to be a never before seen situation in Ontario. There's just going to be so much to unpack with that, and by all means, we will probably be getting quite a bit of coverage out of this channel on some of that. So that's way further down the road, though. I'm talking ahead of ourselves, but yeah, there's many good things to come. But definitely Tuesday, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll be on tomorrow night at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Come to both because we love having you. But if you're unable to make Monday, be here Tuesday because it's going to blow your mind.
Yeah. And we do need your help. We need to get established a little more firmly, both in terms of equipment and platforms. And that's going to take a little bit of money, and we could sure use your help. So if you can donate to us, you can do that at freedomreporters.com, or you can click the hot links in the YouTube and Facebook descriptions. I'll work on that Rumble channel again, and hopefully we have that back online for everyone tomorrow night so we can start to migrate everyone from YouTube over to Rumble and other video platforms as well. So would really appreciate the support. And if you can't, I'll let Brendan, if you can't support us financially, I'll let Brendan explain again how you can support us in other ways.
Please give this video a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button and the bell for notifications. We do appreciate all of the support that you give, and in our pursuit of the truth and bringing information for everybody and supporting freedom of speech. Your help has been greatly appreciated, and we absolutely love coming out here and doing this every night. For the meantime, though, my name is Brendan Kennedy, and I'm the co-host here at Maverick News and the Freedom Reporters. Have a great night, everybody.
And I'm Rick Walker, reminding you that we are the antivirus program for your mind. Catch y'all tomorrow night, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the flip side.